Parkinson's. To some, it's just a word. To others, it has so much more of a meaning. Some of you out there might have Parkinson's. Some of you might have a loved one, a family member, or a friend. Some of you might be caregivers to people that have Parkinson's. It's an impactful word. It's deep, it's meaningful, and we never want to stop supporting and making people aware of this disease. And me personally, this is my first time speaking on behalf of my journey, a little bit about a portion of what my late husband had. In his case, it was Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. However, I have the great pleasure of introducing a guest today to speak with me about Parkinson's. He is Dr. George Ackerman. He is an author of A Son's Journey from Parkinson's Disease, Caregiver to Advocate. And he is an advocate, and it's a different story. And that's what I want to talk about, is his perspective and my perspective, and as well as what we want the community to be more aware of and support to those that have Parkinson's, or supporting family members, loved ones, or caregiver. Not only is Dr. Ackerman an author of this book, he is also a huge advocate of a cause, or movement, I should say, called TogetherForSharon. Sharon was his mother, and I'm not going to touch that story. So it's with pleasure that I am introducing today's guest, Dr. George Ackerman. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks to all your viewers. It means the world to me, and so many out there, millions really, to bring this topic to the forefront. And hopefully we can ensure that people out there listening realize that they're never alone.
Never alone. And that's a good point. And I know we wanted to touch on some certain subjects, which is always hard to cover in one sitting. And you said being alone. And often when you are dealing with somebody, I don't like the word dealing, but when you are with somebody that is a family member or your partner with Parkinson's, I think we also need to make aware to the community that you don't have to be alone. And that, we want to talk about things like how to avoid self-care burnout. And now, George, can you walk our audience through a little bit of why you do this and why you wrote a book?
Yeah, honestly, I'm excited today because you're local. So it's even more important that our South Florida community understands Parkinson's. There are a lot of individuals, unfortunately, elderly population and young, that have Parkinson's in our community. I had the honor to speak in front of the Palm Beach Commission on Parkinson's awareness. Also, the mayor of Boca Raton and the governor of Florida, DeSantis, all proclaimed Parkinson's Awareness Month last April in my mother's memory, which was really amazing, but not an easy feat, which is why I am excited again to talk, because we need more of the media. We need more celebrities. We need everyone involved. Ryan Reynolds, a famous actor, just recently came out nationally that his father suffered from Parkinson's. So now, which is a good way, but bad, sad, now that he's getting into it, it's all over I'm hearing no one's ever addressed hallucinations and delusions, which is a big problem with Parkinson's, and not every individual actually faces. My mother did. So as we, get into these topics, it's very important to understand it. And it's not just the person diagnosed, as you know, it's the family and the community that are affected. I started TogetherForSharon.com really in memory of my mother, and I thought just 2 or 3 people would see it. But as of yesterday, we had over 40,000 people visit. I don't know if it's because of some of the awareness we are doing, or again, sadly, I hate to repeat it, that the disease is progressing so quickly. It's about 1 million people in the U.S., but 10 million around the world, which was shocking.
It is shocking. And the largest community is China. And that is because of the aging population that they have there. And which is interesting to know the statistics. And, we're not going to tie up. I'm not going to tie up with the statistics, but it is amazing how much, you would think the awareness would be out there. And you spoke about the hallucinations. I know specifically, I mean, this is a cute little story. I remember one time my late husband thought he was eating a hamburger. And, and just what people don't understand, it's a partial side effect of the disease as well as the medication that's used, at least in my case, because there was dementia involved. And, I just remember, him picking up his hand in front of me and biting into it and saying that was delicious. And as a caregiver and a loved one, it's hard to watch that. But at the same time, you need to be empathetic. And the one thing I also learned that I'm curious about your journey with your mother and your role, and for your perspective, she lived longevity with this, whereas in my perspective, Lewy body dementia Parkinson's is a brutal, quick 4 to 6 years from onset, not diagnosis. So your perspective on Parkinson's and my perspective on it are a little different. I went fast and furious, and it was hard to definitely see how fast and his mental acuity was still there as he's losing his body and knowing it was terminal. And when you are in your position, like with your mom, how did you, and what advice would you give to people to keep their spirits up when they are losing their capabilities of being independent?
Yeah, I wrote the book for a main purpose is we never have the time to cover so much, and there is so much to talk about. My mother had about 15 years, but we didn't really know anything more than the word Parkinson, and I didn't even know it was a disease because she lived independently. She had her own home. She loved to be kind of independent. Of course, she loved when her grandkids came over to scream and holler throughout the halls. But she only towards the last 4 years did it really change our lives. She had a stiffness in her left arm, but never really, again, something that would be of major life-changing concern. But finally, and I don't name the school or the doctors because I don't blame the doctors, I blame the disease, but she went for a special trial in our state. And I think they drastically changed the medicine too quickly. And that night at 4 a.m., I got a call from New York from my father to rush over to my mother's house in Boca. I got there at 4 a.m. and I never dreamt my life would change forever. She was moving her furniture out of her home and said there were Nazis inside that were going to harm her. And as a son, a police officer, reserve, or anybody, I was kind of baffled. Like I didn't understand what was going on. Mm-hmm. Rushed to the hospital. They said we saved her life, but that was when her life changed forever. She went from being, walking several miles a week to 2 years cane, a year of the walker, then the wheelchair, and then 7 days bedbound with only a heartbeat and not even alive, which is why we need death with dignity laws. We don't have them yet in Florida. So there's a lot, again, to unpack there. Some of the things that kept me kind of going is I wrote a journal, which I have in the book. It's one chapter. It was the final year where I literally wrote a few sentences day and night with timestamps and time stating how I felt. Some days I felt like screaming to the world. Some days I wanted help, anger, excitement, sadness. And they kept telling us for about 15 doctors that you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. So in our world, we said, this is tough. We'll have to keep fighting. But at least she'll still be with us, even though she was, in a way, being tortured, to be honest. And then when she passed at only 69, I'm still kind of in shock and I still grieve. So what gets me through is meeting and talking to incredible and inspiring people like yourself, your audience, and all those battling Parkinson's who now I consider family because of what they're still going through. And I don't want anyone to ever go through what our families or our loved ones have. And that's why I do this Together for Sharon. It's completely free. I don't actually allow money. I don't accept it. Any donations on our website go directly to like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Drive Toward a Cure, Parkinson's Foundation, and Power Over Parkinson's. There's some incredible groups who, they have a lot more resources. I don't have the time that I wish, although I spend 24/7 on this because some nights I don't sleep, wishing my mother, who was my best friend, was still here and just kind of keeping her memory alive, but fighting for everyone else still battling this.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have to say, I don't have tissues next to me. And I'm doing my best right now to put on a smile. for me, the defining moment was we were bi-coastal, and the night before I was leaving to California from Florida, and we were eating dinner, and he had his glass and was shaking. And he was a very private, stoic man. And I said to him, if there was something medically wrong with you, you would share with me, right? 2 weeks later, coming to California to visit, during the summer when our kids were there, that's when our journey of the wrong diagnosis at first, like you said, that happens, and the life changed forever from there. And, we did go down that discussion of ending life, and he did ask me to investigate as much as we could. In his situation, out of state laws, I think there's 2 states that,
New Jersey.
Yeah. And because he had the dementia, it's the one disease you're not allowed to make that choice, even if you had a residency there. And there would be times the hallucinations, he would accuse me of poisoning him. And, it would be heartbreaking. And I think what people need to understand that I want to speak about is that, if you are a caregiver of a loved one or a patient or in a family, not in my situation. I truly was alone in terms of his direct family was not dialed in directly and as much as they should. And even with AIDS, it just became exhausting. And, I don't even know how I did it. And I'm sure you say the same thing looking back. And I think it's important to say to the community out there, if you know somebody that's struggling, taking care of a loved one, or whatever their situation is, they may have a smile. Don't let that fool you. It's pulling on your heartstrings and exhausting you. And how do you stay positive with somebody that is losing their independence and capabilities? It's not an easy thing. And, especially now, I don't know with your mom. I know, and again, because I had different disease combination. Listen, I had a man that was an entrepreneur, very successful, never sick literally a day in his life, never drank, nothing. And here he is losing his mental acuity and his body at the same time. And it's terminal. And how somebody can stay positive and give them hope, you can't. And I wonder if your mother and you and your family had to deal with how to keep her positive and happy when the reality is she was well aware of, what her future might be.
We send our love and support to you and the family too, and wish we have a cure for everybody. But we did everything you said, brought it back so many things to discuss, and each of them is a chapter in the book. Ironically, even though we didn't talk about that before, caregiving, not just for the caregiver, but the support around them is important. My wife was my kind of like hope in heaven that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even be able to made it through that or today, and my 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember one specific area or time on a Sunday morning when my mother was, in her bed. Her granddaughter, Brooke, my daughter, was on the bed, and myself and my mother started hugging the sheets of the bed and saying how much she loved Brooke, and she thought the sheets were Brooke. So my daughter was like about 7. I don't know what to say, and we're actually writing a book now on children and Parkinson's and explaining to the grandparents. But I looked at my daughter. We kind of giggled, like not in a funny way, but in a kind of baffling way, and we just supported my mother. The worst thing in Florida at the time is we were lucky. We found long-term care, which we kept her at home always. We swore we would, but long-term hospice, which has never been done in Florida before, and we qualified. Now that was good because we had nurses and medicine, but it was also very, very, very bad because they don't believe in physical therapy. And as many people know, the only thing a patient or any person has is hope that they'll get better. And when you take that away from them, that was when it really was tough. She got, she was the sweetest, nicest person, but we also had, much more aggression and sadness. We also had to install video cameras because we hired multiple caregiving companies, and I don't really I call them more like babysitters, no offense, but my job for them was just to make sure she didn't fall. Because if she
If
fell
I
on top of Parkinson's, that would have been horrible.
Yeah, I want to interject and I apologize
Sure.
because this is very important what we're talking about. As he likes to say, the son of his mother's name, Sharon, as opposed to just being called George. And what we're talking about is the difficulties and challenges. He was telling a story about his daughter, and it's very true. Having the AIDS is not a replacement of you. And I think many times, and I think family that does not live local needs to hear this. You need to hear what Dr. Ackerman just said. AIDS are babysitters. They are not replacing the loved ones. They are not replacing the doctors. And don't think just because somebody has AIDS, they're okay and they don't need help. I had AIDS. It took 3 of us to walk him around in his weight. But at the end of the day, everything he said he never wanted me to do, I was the only person he wanted to do in the moment. I did things that the memories I try so hard not to honestly remember. And it took years to not wake up with those visions and go to sleep with those visions. And it is something that people don't understand. And extended family, hear us, please. Just because somebody has AIDS to help them with somebody with Parkinson's, it's not the same. And you said it well. No disrespect to AIDS. They are the best people out there. They came to, in my religion, my late husband Shiva took the day off because that's how much we were a family. And they are very loving, but they're only there. And yes, I did the cameras like you did too. And I had the cameras installed. I was very fortunate. It took a long time to get a schedule of 24/7 good shift of aides. I maybe got 3 hours of sleep a night towards the last few months. The sleep deprivation is a real thing that caregivers deal with. And if you could be a relief to anyone please. And you know what? Kick that wall down. If they're saying no, kick it down. I had one best friend. Every time I said no, 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 she was there. She was there. I cried, and then I went back. You had your family, and you were blessed to have that. I didn't have it. And so you're hearing 2 different perspectives on that. And, as well as the one perspective I find interesting is for me, I chose to push everything away that had to do with Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. I felt like I don't want to be reminded of this nightmare that I just lived. And it's taken me, he passed June 21. Here we are in August 24, almost September, and I'm first really talking about it, and it's still hard. How is it you found the strength to go through it and then speak up and write a book and work strongly to help make the awareness of Parkinson's out there in the community and continue to work with, as you said, the government to better serve families and patients and what we need when we're dealing with Parkinson's?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback what you said, so many important areas. Maybe I could discuss fast what Parkinson's is, just if anyone's listening, they might want to know. But there are believed to be 5 stages. This is called the fast forward version. Basically, the first 3 really, person can still live independently, and you'll see possibilities like tremors. Mr. Michael J. Fox, who I had the honor to meet with a few times, has more external, but not everybody has that. My mother had more internal towards the end than she had external. Also, rigidity, bradykinesia, and posture imbalance becomes a problem, as well as difficulty breathing and balance, but not so much where you need aids yet. We're skipping now quickly to stage 4 and 5. That's where independent living really is not possible. So that's when I had to actually take my mother's car keys, and you're taking someone's livelihood when you take the control and the ability to be, in charge of themselves, really. But I was lucky because my mother understood, and, I was her power of attorney, and she actually went to the bank with me. We did a lot of things prior. But again, we were told she wouldn't die of Parkinson's, so that's another show. So anyway, the final stages, again, bring on delusions, hallucinations to some. I also agree it might be due to the medication. Loss of smell, constipation, which we can have another show. These are all shows. But we had nightmares, and I had to fire about 80 aides. Went through several companies, and I do see a big problem in Florida where I don't think a lot of these people are regulated properly. So that's another issue. Also, weight loss, sleep disturbance, and vision. But this is where you can also fall on your own. And even things like bathroom, just daily living is almost impossible at stage 5. So now back to your question. I actually wrote a third book, which won't be out for a year or two because I'm editing. The first book is in memory of my mother, but for all those today battling Parkinson's and their families. But there's a book that means the world to me, and it's a little controversial, and it's going to be dedicated to all the millions of people we've lost due to Parkinson and their families like you. Because I don't want to bash anyone or say anything bad, because a lot of the organizations for Parkinson's are great. I love them. But I don't feel that there's a place for people like us. So I don't have Parkinson's sitting here. I'm no longer a caregiver of someone alive with it, but I am a caregiver or past of someone who passed due to Parkinson. And I notice in a lot of these organizations, or even in awareness, there's not much for us, and we're not really, I feel, welcome all the time. No one wants to hear the sad, we have a beginning, middle, and end of life, and the doctors, for some reason, continue to drill home, almost like battering ram, that you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. So I'm sitting there, and some of the lectures, well, people are saying that. I'm like, wait. You're telling that, but that's not always true. You shouldn't say that if you don't know the facts. And again, medically, my mother had no other issues. So this is a big problem, in my opinion, in society, and I'm hoping to kind of bring a huge attention. I don't know if everyone will see the book because I'm a self-publisher, because a lot of the media and also awareness is very difficult because, again, if you think about it, 1 million people in the U.S. is really not that many, but when it affects you, your community, and your family member, it's the world. So I've been able to fight back. I've had U.S. Senator Rick Scott on our show. We won't discuss Rubio because I'm not too happy. I got a response from them during. I was part of the national plan to end Parkinson's disease for decades and decades, and our whole history of the United States, there was never federal government intervention for people with Parkinson's or their families. And just literally 3 or 4 weeks ago, it passed through the House, Senate a few months ago, but then the president finally signed it into law. And it was just a dream. Obviously, can't bring our loved ones back, but can help funding and find a cure for the future. So now, it's in the spotlight, but we need to get our congressmen and women now at this point to implement it. That's like a whole different journey. And I think just the last note is the key for me is, I was shocked that my mother passed due to this. I don't hate a lot, but I hate Parkinson's disease. I hate what it does to people. And I felt like my mother lost 15 years alive and 15 years when she passed, because I think that she should have still been, 30 years. We've lost her due to this disease. And if you do look at the book cover, I don't know if you can see, but this is a picture from my mother and my wedding, but the mother and son dance. And I love that. It's hard sometimes to talk about, but that picture kind of really emulates this whole journey I'm still on. And that's in those 3 minutes, Parkinson didn't exist, and it doesn't matter because it can never take our memories. And that we still have a video. My mother was so happy. She was beautiful and dancing. Even now, it's not easy to sometimes talk about, but I know that photo, like, literally can never be taken from me because of this disease. And there's just, again, so much more, but, I have to give the show back to you.
No, and you touch on so many important facts, and I appreciate it. And you're right. There's so much to discuss. And, I too, I recently found my Google Drive of all the photos and videos that I had been looking for years and years. And to sit there and hear his voice and see him move or talking, and you forget sometimes that happiness, that laughter, that light weight, and not the daunting heavy weight that we all carry with Parkinson's. Once you, a loved one, a family member has Parkinson's, it's a part of your existence the minute you wake up and to the minute you go to sleep And I say that no one really sleeps well at the end. But I'm curious, do you sometimes think that the big pharma companies on purpose do not want to find a cure for this disease? Because the medication, now I can't remember which medication was more for dementia Lewy body perspective versus the medication that was for Parkinson's. He was on so many medications. And like you said, the medication, and I say, the medications themselves had horrible side effects too. But I remember these medications, and we had great insurance, they would be $5,000 or more a month. And we are very fortunate we could afford it, and we could afford all the best of everything. And with that said, this man that was so well accomplished and had the means, there was nowhere in the world to go to help better anywhere. And so I wonder, have you ever felt that big pharma gives pushback, so it's about revenue and buying their medication?
When my mother passed, that was horrible too, cleaning out her home. It was brand new. We just bought her a brand new house to be closer to us so I can get back and forth. And she only really, we had a beautiful backyard with a fake man-made lake that was just, I figured she'd just sit there for 10 years and enjoy her life. And she never, the day she walked in there was the last year of her life, and never really even enjoyed it. So that was tragic. But I threw out 5 of those huge black contractor bags of medicines when she passed away.
Wow.
And that's not normal. So that might answer your question. I can't really state as an attorney, I don't want you or me, so I can't say that. I mean, I think that, like you mentioned, the business, unfortunately, the government has to do more. We didn't get to it, but they believe the cause of Parkinson's, and I do agree, is in more environment, like the food, the pesticides they spray on our food at the shopping centers, the things they use in our bug spray, like pesticides. Right now, China banned a horrible chemical that can kill people called paraquat, but the U.S. hasn't banned it. They rejected it. So I don't understand that. We have to all be a part of this by actively contacting our representatives, and if they don't respond, keep trying. And I think the way to change the world is mass people writing. If it's just me, I might not get a response. They don't even know who my local representative is. Don't even ask. That's another story. I've written to several people. No one knows who represents our section. So I've said, I won't joke, but I'm like,
yeah,
no one can represent me or know who they are. Then why do we have to pay the taxes to our representatives anyway? That's important. But yeah, it's hard to say. I just think that even today, we had bug spray today. They do not come in the house. They only do externally the house. 10, 15 years ago, they sprayed who knows what in the house. And my mother lived in a beautiful home, but she had mold and termites over 20 years. And I remember them tragically spraying horrible, heinous things. I'm sure you saw the one case where a little child passed away due to pesticides because the parents and the children came in back too early after spraying for termites, and they weren't aware, and he passed away. So a lot of these chemicals are very frightening. I was shocked to find out when I was interviewing a medical doctor about the causes of Parkinson's that he said the dry cleaning stuff they use, the chemicals, can cause it. So while we were talking, I was thinking of ways to take the jacket off and burn it. I couldn't do it, but it's frightening what we trust, the FDA and our government. We trust them, and we're just hoping they do the right thing, but not always does that happen until, again, not to get into a business law course, which I teach. If you look back to the Ford Pinto, the car kept exploding on collisions, and they didn't change anything till enough people passed away. And then all of a sudden it became media national, and then they stopped it. But, we sadly need that, I guess, at this scenario before someone makes a big change.
Yeah, you would think, and I think the average person, and that's why I appreciate you coming on here and sharing how much of an advocate you have to be in your community. And it takes people like you, George, in every community speaking up. I know it touches us being in Boca because we do have a majority of retired people and aging. So we in Boca Raton, Florida, probably have a higher statistics of it. And, it is, if you are out there and involved in any way with Parkinson's, please reach out to the people in your community, in the government. And, you raise a really good point about the pesticides. These are things that, we don't think about the average person. For example, I always thought he was the healthiest, cleanest person, good, how? Nothing genetically. And, I think that's a really valid point that you make. Be aware of what you're surrounding yourself with. Be aware of the implications possibly that you could be getting from these chemicals that are not banned and nobody is regulating. And we don't know 100% what everything has in it. And that is, just because it's allowed doesn't mean it's good for you. And, that's a valid point to be more aware of it. As you were speaking about that, I was thinking about all the times we had them spray inside the house. And with my late husband, one of the businesses he was involved with or owned had to deal with a chemical and pets. And in the back of my mind, as you're speaking, I'm going, oh, in his early years, was he around this? But I know people that had no issue and same business, but it's something to be aware of. And I think you have to be your own advocate on that. And, I like that you brought that to the forefront, because most people think genetics. How did this happen? It's nowhere in the family. And you probably have more research and knowledge about that. Do you know where they are at in terms of thinking about the genetics versus our environment in causing Parkinson's?
Yeah, they don't think it's fully genetic, but I have to tell you, and if we have time, I'll get to it. 2 years ago, I realized that. I was shocked. I knew there were about 1 million people in the U.S., but didn't know there were 10 million around the world with Parkinson's. So I interviewed over 800. It's going to be 1,000 before I know it. People around the world, from Africa to India to Asia to, you name it, from, even Canada to Nova Scotia. Parkinson doesn't discriminate. It's, around the world. But when a lot of the people I've interviewed, their parents had it and their grandparents. So definitely makes me think, but not everybody. I don't have it yet. I don't know if I'll have it. I even thought about getting tested here in Florida, but then I'm like, if I don't have it, then, I don't want to have to worry if I do. It's just hard to really figure out what to do with that. But I think that it's very important to also cover other people's journeys. And I am pretty excited because I don't know if I think I mentioned to you, but we are releasing in maybe 4 books, all the interviews. They're all free right now at TogetherForSharon.com. But we're releasing one new book, hopefully in the next month. It's going to be called Resilience, and it's 200 stories of people, advocates, doctors, and people with Parkinson's from around the world. And it'll have all their interviews throughout the book, and trying to offer it as an ebook completely free. And I'm doing that. We'll have a soft cover for a small price, but I want the ebook free just because, again, I don't want anyone to think they're alone. And if they have this, they can read the stories. They can realize that they're never alone, and it's no excuses. It'll be free. So and even the other book I have, we donated 100% of it to the different organizations like Michael J. Fox. So it's not easy to do this. We're not a foundation on purpose because I didn't want it to be about money, but it's hard to fund all these things. We're thinking about making a documentary. I have several other books already. 2 of them are done, just waiting, but it's extremely, extremely expensive as an independent publisher. And it's not something that's sad in society that money could stop me from kind of getting what I think we need out there, which is some important awareness.
That's a lot. And we are very appreciative of you and your family's fight and putting everything into making those that are out there more aware of Parkinson's. And it's amazing what you are doing. And I personally, think that most people wouldn't think that perhaps reading other people's stories could be helpful, but it is. And that's the whole purpose of my 50's AF podcast. We talk about many things, but the whole point is to create a community where, a safe place where people can go and, hey, I'm not alone on this journey. And, I want people to understand who are dealing with Parkinson's or Lewy body dementia that it's okay to not be good. It's okay to fall apart. Listen, you're not alone. This is what other people went through. And to your point about the 1 million, they say it's going to be 1.2 million by 2030. And then what's interesting is that men are 1.5 times more likely to have Parkinson's than women. that's also another interesting statistics. And again, like we're talking about, we don't know about the genetics or why that is, but I think at the end of the day, you have done such a heroic action and what you do, putting together, Together for Sharon and your books that you're putting out there, and for reaching out to those that you need to reach out to make decisions, to make things change. And you're going to get pushback, but the more you talk about it, hopefully throughout the United States, people will also do the same thing as you and put the pressure on the government. And we need to be seen and heard is what you are doing. You are being seen and heard on behalf of Parkinson's. And I would like to, conclude by asking you if you want any last words, but I would like to say how fortunate we are for you, your family, and for you investing the time, effort, and resources to hopefully help not just people that have Parkinson's and get fundraising for it, and for future tests, and the government to be more of an advocate. And, you and I understand all too well the right to choose your life or not. Those of you that don't live it, you don't understand. People should have a right to not have to live that quality of life. And you don't judge what you don't know. And I think that's a touchy subject, but for those of you out there that don't know, don't judge. For those of you in it, we hear you, we understand. And George, son of Sharon, or Dr. Ackerman, whichever way, I want to give you any opportunities for closing remarks that you want people to take away from today.
I mean, just in your last segment, I can think of 10,000 other topics we need to talk about. I do say thank you again for the opportunity, and to all your audience, we love you. I do have a little statement I always say also, but I don't think this conversation ends today. We'll share it around the world, but we'll share it more than once. I don't believe in let's do a show and see you later. That's not going to get a cure. So what I do is, again, try to share it multiple times as much as I can forever, because till we get this. And I also kind of want to say we're a target, because it sounds odd, but I love going on shows with individuals who, I mean, you're aware already, but people who aren't aware, in the audience who aren't aware and don't have it, because I love the Parkinson's community, but if we don't reach everybody, we're not going to be closer to a cure. So my last thing is, feel free to reach out anytime. It's just me. I always respond. It's TogetherForSharon.com. If you go to the website, scroll down, you'll see a little looking Christmas tree. It's Linktree, and you can link to all 7 or 8 now of my social media. Some nights I don't sleep doing this, just because I wish my mother was here, and I wish no one had to fight this again. But we love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I, along with your amazing host here, will advocate for you, and together I feel our voices are so much stronger. And I always kind of say I'm just getting started, because every day I meet somebody like you in your audience, or somebody battling Parkinson's, or I always say the journey I'm not aware of is the only thing that breaks my heart. But when I discover somebody new, like this group of 4 men who, I don't know if you heard, they rode around the world and raised $40 million for a cure. I hope to have them on my show someday. But those are the things that, I wake up, and when I'm having my own back pain or problems in life, I kind of go brush it off and get right back to, trying to advocate for a Parkinson's cure, because the only way we're going to be closer is if we all are in this as a family together. So thank you again.
No, thank you. And all of the links and information that Dr. Ackerman mentioned is going to be hosted on our website under guest resources always. And I strongly encourage you guys to look and support, please. Whether it's reaching out to somebody, or if you're a caregiver, people like us, we're here for you. I know that sounds corny. We are genuinely here for you. And to have a platform where people can be of support. I know as a widow, I'm a support to many widows out there, and they reach me directly. And it's something I'm passionate about, helping people navigate. And now navigating Parkinson's is very individual for each person. But with that said, It's never just easy. And that's why somebody like Dr. Ackerman and myself want to be seen and heard and reach those that are out there that don't normally hear about this subject or have shied away from it. Or what I like to say is the extended family, be dialed in, help, be aware. There is things like showmanship, and I'm not going to go into that now. You can look it up. So you may think your loved one is fine and the person caring for them is exaggerating. No, you have to be dialed in. And with that, I would like to say thank you so much again. And to my audience, please, this is not the first time we're going to be talking about these subjects, as it's near and dear to me about conveying my journey as a 55-year-old widow and what I went through and my desire to help people out there. So thank you for joining us today.